Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So as we make our way through the 5 Shis, the Panchakosha, the 5 koshas, we are now going to start our discussion of the Anandamaya kosha. This fascinating, fascinating subject. So let's back up a bit and we talk about the 3 terms that the scriptures use to point to indicate the self. Satchidananda, Sat, pure existence, Chit, pure awareness, Ananda, bliss absolute. And we have thundered that you're experiencing the self all the time. And then a thinking person says, Jim, that's nonsense. I do not experience bliss all the time. I had a terrible day. So obviously, what we think bliss is not what it is. So the place I like to start with is to translate Ananda as no sorrow reaches there. Heat and cold get as far as my body. Sukham dukkham cha, pleasure and suffering get as far as my mind. Siddha, asiddha, success and failure get as far as my intellect. But nothing touches me. Well, then why do you call it bliss? We're going to discover a lot about bliss this evening as we start our discussion of the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. So again, would someone remind us what number the verse is? Was it 207?
Yeah, 207, chapter 44.
All right.
The
Will you
heading is
help us out,
44,
please,
the verse is
Ganesh?
207.
आनंद प्रतिबिंब चुंबी तत ततनुवर्ति तमोजृंभिता स्याद् आनंदमय प्रियादिगुणकः स्वेष्टार्थलाभोदयः पुण्यस्यानुभवे विभाति कृतीनाम् आनन्दरूपः स्वयं सर्वो नन्दति यत्र साधु तनुभृन्मात्रः प्रयत्नं विना. The Anandamaya Kosha, bliss sheet, is that modification of nescience, which is kissed by a reflection of the Atman, which is bliss absolute. Pleasure, etc., are its attributes, and it springs into expression when an object agreeable to it presents itself. The fortunate feel it spontaneously, and the fruits of their good actions manifest. Every being without the least effort derives great joy from it.
So the Anandamaya Kosha is a modification of pure ignorance. Meaning, at the moment we experience the Anandamaya Kosha, the projecting power of the mind is in abeyance. All we have is the Avarana Shakti, the veiling power. And here Shankara says, we experience it at the satisfaction of a desire. So you have all heard me talk about this process when I talk about what I call the pleasure principle. So I desire an object. We have the prayer stone as the stand-in for the person, place, thing, or situation. When desire and object of desire become one, for a moment, the Vikshepa Shakti stops. And when the Vikshepa Shakti stops, my mind momentarily is, to use Shankara's terms, kissed by the bliss of Brahman. Meaning, the agitation, the suffering, the restlessness, the discontent, the irritability is all Vikshepa Shakti. When that ceases, the mind, as it were, comes home. Momentarily, we get a taste of the bliss of the cells. Brahmananda rasa. Rasa means juice or essence or taste. So, what happens to my mind is always the same, no matter what the object of desire is. Ice cream, beautiful music, good sex, endorphins from a run, all of them do the same thing to my mind. When I'm in that state for a moment, the projecting power has ceased. And I call that joy, happiness, pleasure, fun, has many different names. It will vary in intensity and duration depending on how badly I wanted the object and how completely it met my picture. There's also a gradation in terms of gross and subtle objects. Overall, the grosser the object of desire, the easier it is to acquire, but the more fleeting the bliss. Chocolate, easy to acquire, but the bliss is very intense, but ceases almost immediately. Subtler things. Am I still online? The picture just went away.
Yes, I see you. I'm here.
Okay. The subtler objects, like love or approval or status, a little harder to acquire, but they last a little longer. Ideas, even more subtle. They can give us pleasure for years. You can enjoy philosophy, for example, and enjoy reading the works of the great philosophers. That can bring you great joy. You can be committed to, say, fighting for justice. That idea can give you great satisfaction for a lifetime. I was watching Rachel Maddow's interview with Chuck Schumer tonight. You could really see this is a man who gets great pleasure out of doing what he can to bring about good things for the world, for the country, by his understanding of it. Now, what is the subtlest of ideas? Who can tell me? No takers? Your idea of God. And your idea of God can bring you bliss for a lifetime. It's the subtlest object. But what it does to the mind is always the same. We've talked about, again, how the whole dynamic starts. First thing is you determine what's dear to you. The word is priya, dear. It can be asparagus. Somebody else say, "Oh, I hate asparagus." It can be Brussels sprouts. Oh, I love Brussels sprouts. Oh, those are terrible. We determine what it is that's dear to us. Then we get proximate to the object of desire. That's called moda, M-O-D-A. I buy it, I seduce it, I cook it, I marry it, I move into it, I get promoted to it, whatever it is. Then when desire and object of desire become one, that point of pleasure, it's called pramoda, the point of pleasure. When all the Vikshepa Shakti, the projecting power, has ceased, and all we have is the Avarana Shakti, the veiling power. Because I do not know that in fact what I'm experiencing is myself. So the fool goes after the widget, and when desire and object of desire become one, they say, "Oh, that's a great widget. There's nothing like widgets. Let's have more widgets." The yogi, desire rises in his bosom. Desire for widget, I can let it go, but there's a widget there. I think I'll play with the widget. Desire and object of desire become one. Ah, Krishna. That really stopped my mind. Krishna. 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 So there's a practice that is implied in this. We have to watch our minds. We have to watch, what does it feel like when I'm under the throes of that projecting power. Goes by many names. Kama, craving. Vancha, wanting. Spriha, longing. Krishna, thirsting. More, better, different, more, better, different. Gimme, 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 gimme. What does that feel like? It sucks. That is my dukkha. That is my suffering. Last night in Gita, what is it? Arjuna says, that causes us to be impelled into this world of misery. Krishna says it is kama, it is krodha. Desire and desire's offspring, krodha, anger. Because when I don't get what I want, or it doesn't meet my desires, I'm pissed off. I start all the control things going. My great character starts to decline. So we also want to pay attention to what happens to our minds when we satisfy a desire. Pay attention to it. Make friends with your bliss. See whether or not what the scriptures say is true, that it always tastes the same. What it does to my mind is always the same. Sometimes it's more intense, sometimes it's less. I use the object in order to experience the Anandamaya Kosha, which is a kiss of the bliss of Brahman. So we're starting to see why we call the self Ananda. It is the font of bliss. It is the source of all happiness. It's the human mind that has it can be blissful because the self is bliss absolute. I think I need all this stuff in order to be happy. What I'm looking for, I'm looking with. That old country western song, looking for love in all the wrong places. That's it. You are the love that you seek. You are the joy that you seek. You are the peace that you seek. You are the happiness, the fullness that you seek. Come home. Here in this verse, Shankara has said, as the result of past good actions, you experience the Anandamaya Kosha with some frequency. If, on the other hand, you've had bad actions in the past, you may have a life with quite a bit of suffering this time. You don't get to experience the Anandamaya Kosha as much as some others. It's not fair. It's just, but it's not fair. Any thoughts on this before we move on? Because it's incredibly important. All right, Ganesh, next verse, please.
आनन्दमयकोशस्य सुषुप्तौ स्फूर्ति उत्कटां स्वप्नजागरयोरीश इष्टसन्दर्शनादिना. The Anandamaya Kosha is fully manifest in the deep sleep state. while in the dream and waking states, it's only partially manifest depending on the sight of pleasing objects, etc.
So when is the Anandamaya kosha in its full state? Remember in the prior verse we said it's a modification of nescience or pure ignorance. What is the state of complete ignorance? Deep sleep. Everything is folded up. The mind is then in its seed form. You don't even have enough mind to be able to say, oh, it's such a blissful sleep. You have to wait till the morning. Oh, I slept so soundly. I don't remember a thing. And the worse our problems are in life, the more we want sleep. And if we have bad sleep, oh God, shoot me up with heroin. I need to be unconscious. That's an interesting point. The people who are attracted to things like sedatives or opiates, what they're seeking is the bliss of the pure ignorance of the Anandamaya kosha, or getting close to it. Now, I frequently will talk about what's called the Vasanananda, the state of Vasana Ananda. I call it snooze alarm bliss. So in the morning, the alarm wakes you up. Oh God, another 10 minutes. Oh, it feels so good. Just a little more, and you're dozing. You've got just enough mind there to, in the now, enjoy the bliss of that state. Oh, it's so wonderful. Mind you, no object is causing this. Then what happens? 10 minutes later, bring. Oh, God. Well, what am I going to do about that report at work? And oh, yes, I've got to call the roofer because there's a leak in the roof and the rains are coming. And oh, I yelled at so and so yesterday and I've got to clean that up. And I don't know what I'm going to do to pay this bill. You know that state? And then all of a sudden, all the bliss is gone. Why? Vikshepa Shakti. The mind has returned with its likes and dislikes and its kartavya, its obligatory actions. Or as Hamlet says, we grunt and sweat under a weary life. Work, work, work. Why? Gotta keep the zoo going. No rest. At night, oh yeah. Now in the dream state and in the waking state, the Anandamaya kosha is only partially revealed. We have moments of happiness in the dream, moments of happiness in the waking state. But we don't realize what's going on because we're fooled and distracted by diverse sensory input. I had a marvelous dream this morning. I was with a bunch of people and we were having like satsang with somebody. I don't know what it was. really tuned up in the dream, a bliss out dream. And then somebody brought this cup of coffee, and it was as thick as syrup. It was really, really good coffee. And I'm drinking this coffee in the dream. And I'm going, my God, this is really good. Where did you get it? How do you make it? And it was an Indian lady who had made it. She handed it to me. You know, such happiness in the dream. Not any different than happiness in the waking state. But it has a beginning and an end. It varies in intensity and duration and is associated with the satisfaction of a desire. This is the nature of the Anandamaya Kosha in the waking and dream state, whereas the mind is completely folded up in its seed form in deep sleep. Meaning its only conditioning is pure ignorance. Pure ignorance. There's a Varana Shakti, veiling power, but no Vikshepa Shakti, no projecting power. Any thoughts on this? Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Naivayam Anandamaya Paratma Sopadikatpat Prakrite Vikarat Karyatvaheto Sakrita Kriyaya Vikara Sanghata Samahitatvan. Now can the Anandamaya Kosha be the Supreme Self? Because it has attributes which are ever changing. It is a modification of Prakriti, is created as a result of good actions of the past. It lies embedded in the other sheets, which are in themselves all modifications.
So the Anandamaya Kosha is not the Supreme Self. And he's given the reasons. Now, practically speaking, this is where we start to get into trouble. Because many people think that spirituality is about getting high in some form. God knows I love blissful mind states. I do. People, they want to do Kundalini yoga. It's wonderful. They huff and puff and huff and puff and get all whacked out. Or they think, oh, I'm going to take ecstasy. I love everybody. All this sort of stuff, or things that we do that put us in a blissful mind state. And then what happens is you start getting attached to that. And then, of course, like all mind states, it has a beginning and an end. And then you want to keep trying to get back there. Oh, I was with Guruji and I got so high and I was so blissful. I want to get back there. Even that. Anandamaya Kosha. It's a modification. It's very clear. Are you aware of its beginning and ending? Does it have qualities? Is it an object of cognition? Oh, Jim, I got so tuned up in class. I'm very happy. That can be very useful. Were you tuned up before you came to class? No. Did you get tuned up in class? Yes. Did you know this mind state? Oh, yes. What happened when you got home? My boyfriend yelled at me. Were you aware that the blissful state left? Oh, yes. It has a beginning and an end. It has qualities and characteristics. It's subject to change and is an object of awareness. You are not the Anandamaya Kosha. Did you sleep well last night? Oh, yes. How do you know? I don't remember a thing. Do you know that you know nothing? Yes, I know nothing. You shine on pure ignorance. Did the chocolate cheesecake make you happy? Oh, yes, very happy. Did you know the happiness? I know that. Beginning and an end. Qualities. That's not it. And a lot of people get very stuck chasing some kind of a high. Any thoughts on this?
Yes, you were saying that Anandamaya Kosha, when you're touched with the object of desire, or the mind is recognized with it, you are, weren't you also saying that it's touching the same bliss that is Ananda, or that is one with God?
If you know that it's yourself,
Yeah, if you know that it's yourself,
then there's no ignorance.
Yeah.
Now, at first, that's just an idea. You have to prove it to yourself through your own direct experience. You do that by observing and paying attention to your own happiness, your own pleasure. Own it. And if you continue your meditation, the time will come when you'll see, oh, I'm so peaceful. This feels so good. It's myself. Then you have Atmaramana, you have the mind reveling in the self. Brahmanandarasa, you know you're tasting the juice of Brahman. You don't attribute it to an object. Then the
you don't
object
attribute it to the chocolate or the alcohol, you attribute it to Brahman.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But what you'll find is if the only way you get your bliss is through the world, it's like wearing boxing gloves all the time. It's so indirect. The bliss of yourself, independent of the world, is so much cleaner. And the difference is the chocolate cheesecake isn't always available. Yourself is always available. How do I keep the mind abiding in the self, absorbed in the self? It's real simple. Let go of the world.
That's the same thing Nisargadatta Maharaj says. In order to know the world, you must forget the self. In order to know the self, you must forget the world.
You got it.
Saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good point. Good point. All right, next one, please, Ganesh.
Panchanaamapi koshanam nishedhe yuktitashrutehe tannishedha pathi sakshi bodharupa vashishyate. And the five sheets have been negated through reasoning based upon authoritative scriptural texts. Then, at the acme of the process, what remains is the witness, knowledge absolute, the self.
So when I go through this process, I am not the Annamaya Kosha, the physical body. I am not the Pranamaya Kosha, the energy sheath. I am not the Manomaya Kosha, the mental sheath. I am not the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the knowledge sheath, or the intellectual sheath. I am not the Anandamaya Kosha, pure ignorance. What remains is the self. Now, I think pretty soon in the next verse or two, the Shish is going to ask a question. Is it coming up, Ganesh?
I think the next section is Atman, other than the five koshas.
Okay. So now he's going to describe what is the self. Because the problem is this: after I've negated the five koshas, there's nothing left. Kohum, who am I then? And now he's going to describe it. Going on, please.
Yoyam Atma Swayam Jyotihi Panchakosha Vilakshanaha Avasthatraya Sakshi Sannihi Vikaro Niranjanaha Sadananda Savigneyaha Swatmatvena Vipaschita. This Atman is self-effulgent and distinct from the five sheets. It is the witness of the three states, is real, is without modifications, is unsullied, and bliss everlasting. The wise man should realize it as his own self.
So the self is that by which the five koshas are known. It is that is the witness of the waking dream and deep sleep states. But itself is never known as an object. It's never going to be, oh, there I am in meditation. There's the self. I see it go by. No. Does that mean it's unknowable? Yes, it's unknowable as an object. Well, that means you could never know the self. No, the self is known. How do you know it? Shankara uses the term here, Swayam Jyoti, self-luminous. Jyoti is a light, like a lamp. So the question here is, how do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell yourself. You do not feel yourself. You're not a feeling. You don't think yourself. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I wonder what if he'd ever had the experience of stopping his mind, seeing if he disappeared. How do you know you are you? I don't know. I just know it. Yeah. The self is the knower. It is its own means of knowledge, the knowing. And it is that which is known. It is self-evident. It is self-luminous. It's not like consciousness one knows consciousness two. It's your very experience of I. And you've always had that, it's hard to use a word, experience. It's not experience in the normal sense of I-ing. When are you ever not you? And did he say without taint, without dirt, without modification? I can't remember the phrase he used, Ganesh.
It's without modifications, unsullied and bliss everlasting.
Yes, without modification. That self never changes. It's always vast and empty. Unsullied. Did he use nirmalam?
I think he used Niranjanam.
Niranjanam. Okay. Without any taint, without any, not sullied in any way. Chidakash is what the expression Yoga Vasishtha uses. It's one of my favorites. The space or the sky of consciousness itself. Don't believe me. Don't believe Shankara. Maybe yourself is a little gray ball with wings. Look. In a mind made very still, a sattvic mind. Negate the 5 koshas with the attentive faculty. Introverted. Who are you? What are you? See what you discover. Next verse.
Shishyawacha Mithyattvena Nishiddheshu Koshetveteshu Panchasu Sarva Bhavam Vina Kinchinna Pashyamyatra He Guru Vigneyam Kimu Vasti Svatmana Vipashchita. Shishya asked, after negating these 5 sheets as unreal, I find nothing but an absence of everything or revered teacher. By which entity then should the wise man realize his oneness with the Atman?
Yes, so that's the question. So there's nothing there. What is realization then? If I negate the 5 koshas, what is realization? How does one realize the self? Let's see what the Guru says. Next verse.
Sri Guru Ravacha Satyamuktam Tvaya Vidvan Nipunosi Vicharane Ahamadi Vikaraste Tadbhavo Yamapyana Sarve Yenanubhuyante Yaswayam Nanubhuyate Tamatmanam Veditaram Vidibudhya Susukshmaya. The Guru answered, rightly have you spoken, O learned one. You're indeed clever in your ability to discriminate. Through an extremely subtle intellect, realize the Atman, the knower to be that, by which all modifications like the ego as well as their absence during deep sleep are perceived, but which itself is not perceived.
So, what is realization? He says in a sukshma buddhi, in an extremely subtle intellect. So we're dealing with two kinds of knowledge here. The first knowledge is the perfect knowledge that cannot be gained, cannot be lost, and that's the self-evidence of I. Self is swayambhu, self-evident. I am. The great cosmic joke is you've always had that. But what Shankara is talking about, another technical term for it is pratyabhignana, recognition. It's the aha that takes place in the subtle intellect. When the mind is incredibly pure and the thoughting is incredibly slow or stopped all together. You've negated all phenomena. And what remains is I. And the subtle intellect goes, oh, there's no person there. There's nothing there. I am vast and empty, birthless and changeless. So this aha occurs to the subtle intellect. Not just as a conviction or an opinion gained through study, but through this direct experience. Then the intellect, the buddhi, becomes buddha, awake. You're truly woke AF. Now, be very careful. Because if ego then reforms, oh, I know the self. I'm somehow important. Who thinks he knows the self? Stupid ego, drop it. Who thinks he's important? Stupid ego, drop it. Who are you? Chidananda Rupaham, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am of the form of bliss consciousness. I'm Shiva. I'm auspiciousness. No personal form of self is real. If you think you're a person, you're deluded. If you know you are Brahman, that's the awakened mind. This is incredibly subtle. If it's going, just put it on the shelf. Next verse.
Tatsakshikan bhavet tatta adhyadhyenanubhuyate kasyapya nanubhutarthe sakshitvam nopayujyate. That which is witnessed by something else has the latter as its witness. When there is no entity to witness a thing, we cannot say that it has been witnessed at all.
So we think of the self as the witness of the phenomenal world. But when it comes to the self, there's no entity to witness the self. Yet it is known. How can it be both unknown and known? No one can ever know the self as something objective. No one ever has an experience of the self. Oh, Jim, I had an experience of the self in meditation last week. You're having it now? No. Then you didn't have an experience of the self. I don't know what you experienced. You're always selfing. It's the most ordinary awareness of the most common waking state. Whenever not you. It is never known as an object, yet it is always known as myself. Next verse.
Asau sasakshiko bhavo yata svenanubhuyate atah parasvayam sakshat pratyag atmana chetaraha. This Atman is a witness of itself, for it is realized only by itself. Hence, the Atman itself is the supreme Brahman, nothing else.
Yes. So the instrument for knowing Brahman is Brahman itself. The instrument for knowing the self is the self itself. Yet, the subtle intellect can reflect on it. Let me give you a relative example. Bring your attention to the sensation of your trousers around your waist. I'm wearing a dhoti, not trousers, but if you're wearing a dhoti, you're dhoti. Can you feel that? Now, that sensation has been there since you put your pants on this morning. But what I invited you to do was bring the light of the subtle intellect to reflect on it. Oh, yeah, I can feel the waist of my pants around my waist. It didn't create it, it didn't achieve it, it didn't attain it. It was always there since this morning. I just didn't pay any attention to it. Another example I like to do, rub your hands together. Now stop. The instrument for hand rubbing was hands. Now we are going to reflect on it. When you rubbed your hands together, was it motion or stasis? It was motion. Was it heat or cold? They got warm. So I'm reflecting on my direct experience. Do you see the direct experience of hand rubbing or my waistband is different than the process in the intellect when I reflect on it? This is what we're doing. Now, these things break down because you're always eyeing. It's a constant, eternal being. I am I. Now let's reflect on it. Does it have a beginning? Doesn't seem to. Does it have an end? Can't find one. Does it have any color? Nope. Any qualities? Can't see any. Any shape? Nope. Is it vast and empty like the sky? Yeah. Does it shine as the light of awareness? Yeah, sure does. Is it being itself? Are you a conscious being or are you inert? I'm conscious. All this is reflecting, not just things I'm reading in the book, but through direct investigation of yourself. And that self in you, that is that vast, empty space of consciousness. And the infinite Brahman, which we say is the ground of being of the entire cosmos. They're the same thing. You are not a part of God. Your experience of I is the totality of it. How big are you? You are outside of time and space. You are without dimension, in fact. Okay, I think we'll stop here. What's the first verse for next week?
217.
217. I'm loath to ask questions because a lot of you, I kind of have the sense your minds have stopped. But if you have questions, you may ask them.
Isn't that what's supposed to happen? The mind's supposed to stop? No, sorry, bad joke. Yeah. I don't know. I felt that when it said we were talking about, we experience the Brahman. It's every experience we have proves to us that we are Brahman. Isn't that what it is? Or I don't know. Or that we exist, anyways. It's every constant experience that we have. No? Am I wrong?
When you observe the world, you are experienced as the witness of the world. Disappear the world and see if you disappear.
Is that what happens in deep sleep?
That's not disappearing the world because
Okay,
deep sleep is still there.
Okay. Okay.
You see deep sleep come and go. It's an object of awareness. The Anandamaya Kosha is an object of cognition. It's a modification of ignorance. It is pure nothingness. You are not nothing. You are the knower of the nothingness of deep sleep. Anyone else have a question? All right, then I think we have time for a nice long meditation this evening. Om Namah Shivaya.